Well, I think we can start. Margarita, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining this very interesting webinar. My name is Margherita Zornio, and I work for the Italian Ministry of Universities and Research in the Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership Secretariat. So today I'm here to moderate the webinar, which is a webinar organized by EurOcean Foundation under the framework of EU for Ocean Coalition. So this webinar is actually one of a series of webinars organized by EurOcean under EU for Ocean, with a focus of ocean literacies, business sector, and corporate environmental social responsibility. Indeed, the objectives of those webinars is to talk about ocean literacy, engage with stakeholders from the private sectors, and not only to understand the role of ocean literacy within the business sector, how actually it can build the culture in support of corporate environmental and social responsibility, which are practices that the EU so far is trying to promote through voluntary but also mandatory provision, but so far most of the time is just voluntary. So we hope that through engaging with stakeholders from the business sectors and also ocean literacy, building gaps, address barriers to internalizing ocean literacy in the business sector, private sectors, we can try to indeed create this culture in support of the corporate environmental social responsibility practices. So today our focus will be the aquaculture. We will have two speakers, and afterwards we will have a little bit of time for the question and A. The question and answer will be done through a chat. So please, if you have any questions, you can write in the chat. And it would be great if you also add your name and affiliation so we know to who we are talking with. And we will also share two links before two of the presentation. So to ask you a question, and please so then answer so we can gather also some information from you. First, before starting to dive into our webinar, I would like to introduce you the EU for Ocean Coalition, that is indeed, as I say, the umbrella under which this webinar series is organized. So I will share my screen. Hopefully you can see it in presentation mode. Okay, so very briefly, the EU for Ocean Coalition is a bottom-up pan-European inclusive initiative, which aims to unite the voices and the effort of European individuals and organizations to make the ocean a concert of everybody, boosting ocean literacy. The EU for Ocean Coalition is funded by the European Commission since 2020, and as you can see here in the below, there are the logos of the organization that are actually now working every day to make this machine working. The EU for Ocean Coalition is made mainly of three big communities: the EU for Ocean platform, which is a platform of organizations and individuals that they engage with each other in ocean literacy initiatives, share best practices, and co-create action for boosting ocean literacy in Europe. The Youth for Ocean Forum, which is a forum of young ocean advocates of the age of 16 and 30 that are change makers that are trying to implement their own projects on a regional, local, or even European scale. And then the network of European Blue Schools, which is the network of schools that are committed and engaged in creating projects and programs on ocean literacy on their, again, on local scale, but also collaborating with each other, indeed, because it's a big network. So far, the EU for Ocean Coalition reached over 1,000 members, which is a big number. As you can see here in the map, all the members across the 3 communities are spread around Europe and beyond. You can see also some from outside Europe, and the community is growing and growing. So what actually can EurOcean offer to all of you? First of all, as I said, is a place where when individuals and organizations can build a network, a community around ocean literacy, can co-create action, scale up their own action from a regional to an European scale through workshop and event, networking meetings, resource sharing, handbooks and guidings and guidelines. Also for example, for young people, very important is the mentoring and training programs that have been organized in order to make just an idea, a concrete action. Also with through a call for active collective action with also financial support. It also can give a big visibility to the already existing projects through the big community and widespread of the communication dissemination through social media, the Maritime Forum, the events, the MAQ Blue Awards, and also, last but not least, very important, the EurOcean Coalition. It's also very important politically because it can bring actually ocean literacy up to the EU policy agenda through advocacy campaigns, high-level events and debates, press and media. So this was just a very, very brief overview of EurOcean. I hope I got your curiosity. So please go and check the website. You can engage in a different way. This is you can scan the QR code here in the presentation. And if you have any question, please send an email to the email address that you can see here in the bottom right. The community is open to everybody, and it's there for engaging everybody that really want to make a change and bring really the ocean as in the voices and on the table of everybody in Europe. Very easy also, last but not least, you can join in an easy way the community also through the LinkedIn group, which is a very active group of the entire community where you can share information and connect with the rest of the big community of ocean lovers. So, saying that, now I would like to dive into the real topic of this webinar. Again, if you have any question also related to EurOcean, please put it in the chat. We will then redirect to our colleagues that are working in the EurOcean. Before presenting our first speaker, we would like to ask you our first question. So if Sarah can put in the chat the question to our audience, and then we can see some answers.
Well, I just share. I don't know if everybody can see the slides and vote there, but I will share the link too. I will share the link in the chat for you to vote. And I will stop sharing and you can go to the link. Okay, Margarita, right. You can go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So in the meantime, you will. Sorry, I mute myself. In the meantime, I would like to introduce you to our first speaker of the day, who is Alistair Lane. He is the Executive Director of the European Aquaculture Society, and he will introduce you to the world of aquaculture. He will give us some interesting facts and figures, latest trends and innovation, and he will also strengthen how the ocean literacy is very important tool for this sector. So, Alistair, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Margherita, and thank you for inviting me to talk a little bit about aquaculture and the role of aqua food. When we think about ocean literacy, I kind of went a step back and said, well, what is literacy? Because there's several ways we can look at that. And one of them is looking into ways in which we understand things, ways in which we perceive things. It's about education. It's about how we learn. And it's about our articulateness, how we can express our feelings about a certain subject. So in a word, it's the understanding about the information gained from being educated. When we look at consumer science around aquaculture, there seems to be a lot of understanding in general about, for example, the positive effects of omega-3 on from seafood on health and on brain development. But when we talk about the understanding of how actually food is produced within aquaculture, it appears that consumer knowledge and therefore literacy on this is quite limited. So then when we come to the oceans, we know very well that oceans are our life source. It's a source of richness, abundance, biodiversity. It's also about our livelihoods, about our tradition, and about our culture. And it's where a lot of our food comes from. But we also know that oceans are sensitive and vulnerable. When I was young, I was influenced quite strongly by Jacques Cousteau, who said we must plant the sea and herd its animals using the sea as farmers instead of hunters. That's what civilization is all about, farming replacing hunting. That inspired me to get into aquaculture. I then looked around at this concept of planetary tipping points that's been, it's now called the Planetary Health Check. It originally came from the Stockholm Resilience Center and the Potsdam Institute for Climate Research. And they've basically identified these global planetary tipping points. And what you can see in the center is the kind of safe zone for us. As you go further and beyond that safe zone, you get into trouble. Basically, you're exceeding the capacity of the planet to absorb those areas where we have these tipping points. So you can see those around the outside. I won't go through all of them, but one that's far away is this idea of the integrity of our biosphere and the genetic basis of that, which is basically biodiversity and species loss. You can see climate change, which is also pushing up the radiative forcing here. That's basically coming from what we call anthropologic pollution. It's organic pollutions. It's also GMOs. It's nanomaterials. It's microplastics. Then as you go round, we have these novel entities that used to be called the chemical pollution boundary, if you like. Ones that are in green here are stratospheric ozone depletion. Remember, we solved that. Also, aerosol loading. That's within our capabilities. Ocean acidification is also here, which might surprise you. And in fact, the recent review and update of this planetary tipping points, which was reported by the BBC just last week, showed us that we're now up and beyond our safe zone for ocean acidification. We've seen it coming for some time, but now it's there as a tipping point. And then you can see the fresh water, the biogeochemical flows, phosphorus, nitrogen, etc. But let me just remind you of one thing about aquaculture. We don't consume or waste water. We borrow it. We use it for our culture, whether it's on land or at sea. And when we use it, we clean it and then we give it back. So I don't think we're wasting water as such. We're using it to produce food. And in terms of ocean literacy, when we initially dive into that, yes, okay, you can see here it's basically farming in water. It's a food revolution, aquaculture, for the last 30 years. And we're trying to bring it now to the attention of not only different demographics of consumers, but especially to school children. You can see at the bottom left here the aquaculture remote classroom that goes around the west coast of Ireland, teaching classrooms and giving courses about aquaculture. So the next slides, I'm just going to take you through some of the production techniques that we use, but not in the classical way. And I hope you'll see the difference here. On the left, you have classical oyster trays on the west coast of France here that basically grow the oysters in intertidal zones in bags. And those bags need to be turned and cleaned every single day manually to remove algae and to remove fouling organisms from them, so that water basically goes through the bags and provides the plankton, the phytoplankton that the oysters need. And what this particular project is doing is it's using those oyster bags as a substrate to grow certain species of algae that are desirable. So we're seeing a combined culture of shellfish and also of algae. And at the bottom right here, you can see a scallop shell that's being used as a substrate as well for growing another algae species. In freshwater aquaculture, we normally think about trout culture. Trout culture is an important species in EU aquaculture. This farm in Germany has put up shading over above its raceways to prevent basically big temperature differences in summer and overheating, because trout needs relatively cool water. So this shading provides a kind of more stable environment during periods of excessive heat. And the roof is covered with photovoltaic panels, which power basically the pumps and also the oxygenation or aeration systems that are required here. Another example is a multi-species example in freshwater. This is tilapia being used actually as a kind of fertilizer, if you like, to grow basil plants. This is in a big greenhouse in a kind of outlying suburb of the capital of Berlin. And it creates this, what we call aquaponics system, as an urban farm, creating and producing fresh basil for consumers locally in their local stores and mini supermarkets. This is not actually on the rooftop, but it can be considered as being farming on the rooftop. And this company has opened similar farms in Prague and also in Brussels. When we think about open sea farming, especially, for example, of salmon in Norway, we think of these huge cages in the fjords. And the BBC reported relatively recently about new prototypes and new ideas for classical sea cage farming of Atlantic salmon. And you can see here an example of a contained cage. In other words, a barrier between the water inside the cage and outside in the fjord. The advantage of this is severalfold. First of all, it stops parasites coming into the cage, the famous sea lice that we often hear about on salmon. And it also stops salmon escaping, which is another issue on consumers' minds about farmed fish in general and salmon in particular. So this provides an environment within the cage that is actually easier as well to manage. There's less water flowing through the cages, but that's provided by these pumps that you can see at the bottom of the image here. So basically, food from the ocean has a relevance to all companies that operate not only in this sector, but also in others. As you can see, the sea starts here. So we're all linked, and corporate environment and social responsibility is part of ocean literacy. But it's more than a best practice. It should be enshrined, and it is enshrined in our collective values. And healthy seas are our collective responsibility. The aquaculture food chain is relatively complex. And you can see basically the three levels here. You've got at the top the socio-technical landscape, which is basically the policy, the laws that we have, the effect of global environmental change, of resources, supply and demand. And at the top right here, you can see civil society. In the middle level, we have our technical regime, which is basically the inputs, the licenses to operate, the firms themselves, the primary processors, the secondary processors, wholesale up to retail. And now down at the bottom here, this is where we are, is niche and innovations. So there's a list here of various innovations and therefore business opportunities for companies either in aquaculture or wanting to come into aquaculture. So I want to take a few minutes just to talk about some of the innovations and knowledge that have progressed very recently and in a relatively quick way. First of all, we have system design and technology. There's a lot of research going, and it's multidisciplinary. It's between biologists, it's between engineers, it's between technology experts to basically give us design of systems, not only on land, but also at sea, that is better, more appropriate for us, and more performing. This leads us on to the idea of precision and predictive farming. When we know exactly what we're doing and we can measure what we're doing, then we have a database, and we can use that in various ways to be able to predict outcomes of the next batch of production, for example. All this included the whole idea of big data and how we use that to our advantage. When we talk about climate changes and climate effects, aquaculture is of course subject to these, and in some areas of aquaculture more than others. But one focus in the last few years has been selective breeding, which has been going on for many years in most of the species we culture in Europe, including not just finfish, but also shellfish. And now breeding is focused on climate resilience. Before it was about growth, or it was about food conversion, or it was about fillet yield. And now it's more about temperature tolerance. It's more about using the genomic selection and breeding to our advantage to make the current species that we have in EU aquaculture more resilient. We then have the idea of technology and precision farming to give us insights into real-time wealth and health management. There's no point in treating or losing fish, except in rare circumstances, of course, when you can have the opportunity to measure in real time the welfare of your animals and also the management of health issues in cultures. And a big area, not just in the last few years, but going back more than 20 years, has been about fish nutrition. Where we do feed, and of course there's aquaculture where we don't, shellfish aquaculture, algae, for example. But where we do feed, we've been seriously looking for alternatives to traditional fish meal and fish oil diets, and therefore using a lot of potential new ingredients, new nutritional building blocks, let's say, that can be more sustainable, more locally produced, cost beneficial to us as well, but undermining that, supplying the nutritional benefits of the aquatic animals that we are growing. All of this within a kind of circularity principle, the idea of reusing resources and the idea of value added to resources. An example of this on the feeding side is some years ago now, 4, 5, 6 years ago, Skretting started to introduce in France trout produced using insect meal from a company called Innovafeed, and announced that to French consumers at the end of 2018. What's more natural than rainbow trout or brook trout in this case feeding on insects? But then insect meals are not, let's say, a major component of aquaculture diets. They might represent 10 or 15 or 20%, but that's still 20% less fish meal that's being used. Aquaculture innovation is an area that I wanted to focus on a little bit here. As you know very well, we've got these 4 types of innovation. And when it comes to aquatic food production, I just wanted to give you a few examples of each type of innovation. So when we're looking to improve existing technology in an existing market, we have this idea of moving sea cages to semi-contained or fully contained systems that I showed you earlier. We have recirculating of water systems that we use in land-based aquaculture, even up to 100% recirculation in what we call RAS systems. And we have the idea of progressive automation of our cultures to avoid not only labor cost, but to avoid as well working in dangerous environments, or to improve, let's say, the security of people working in and around aquaculture production areas. When we go disruptive, that means that we engage the same market, but with a completely new technology. And here we have the examples of using this full cycle RAS from egg to harvest on land. And there's already examples of this for several species. We have the idea of going further offshore into very high energy environments where we might need to actually submerge our production cages. And that is already starting to happen with prototypes that we can see around Europe. And then we have the idea of using offshore platforms that might be for oil and gas or might be for renewables to actually produce food. and therefore provide these multi-use platforms, for example, for mussels and for seaweeds. When it comes to processes or new technologies to improve a current process, we've got this alternative feed ingredients. This is a big factor here, as I described earlier. We've got the concept of precision farming that I went into a little bit, and this area of selective breeding. Using genomic selection for this has changed the selective breeding programs for us, because we can look at so many more traits that we're interested in, and we can look at them much more quickly. On the social side, here's the thing. This is where we come into the ocean literacy part. Then putting new farming or new aquaculture ideas to the consumer, farming in urban areas, using techniques such as aquaponics. On freshwater pond farms, a big area of Central and Eastern Europe, using these as multifunctional pond farms. I've seen farms in Hungary that not only produce carp, but they also have fitness and wellness centers. They have museums to educate children about the tradition of pond farming in this part of Europe. And in Southern Europe, especially around Greece, for example, or in the Adriatic, we see fish farm tourism developing, where we have groups of, for example, recreational divers around fish farms to see more from underwater about what we're actually doing in terms of farming these species. So to end with, I've got a couple of slides that I just want to give a couple of questions for. Here's a picture postcard, west coast of Ireland. Looks great. But can these local communities really just survive on tourism? They need industry. I mean, people go to cities to find work, but if you can provide work for them in such an idyllic environment, then let's go for that. What we can see, or what we can't see in this picture, is the fish farm. What we also can't see in the picture is the impact that that farm has, not environmentally necessarily, but socially. Would there be a school in this community without having aquaculture around that area, or other industries based on the sea? Would there be a doctor here, for example? Think about the impact that aquaculture has on these rural economies. Not just on the Irish west coast, as you can see here, but inland as well. So the final point here, to come back to the original question where ocean literacy meets the EU business, in this case in aquafood. When it comes to the aquaculture sector and the operators within that, we have the science, we have the understanding, and we also have the good news stories. Here's a picture of people lining up to go into the Nausicaá aquarium in northern France. You'll hear from them in a second, but big aquariums around Europe are ideal places for aquaculture, or the stories of aquaculture, to be told, to learn, to educate, and to provide this literacy to society. You have the tools, you have the experience, and of course you have the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alistair. Very interesting, and you could capture really the complexity of this sector, and also how much science, knowledge, and multidisciplinarity it is in this. And also thanks to show how we could integrate ocean literacy within this sector. I would also say that ocean literacy itself can be helpful for the sector to drive the change to those companies that still didn't yet meet the social and environmental criteria, to help them changing their way of producing. So I think ocean literacy can be very important for the society to understand aquaculture, but also for aquaculture sector to make to have the good impact. So saying that, we will have now, so if you have any question, indeed you can write in the chat, we will address them later on. Thanks again, Alistair. Now we have the second question for you before passing the floor to Hélène. Sarah?
I'm sharing the question, and why it's not sharing the right question, but well, the question is, before the presentation, have you ever heard about Mr. Goodfish? And I will share again the link for you to vote in these questions to reply, and I will share again the link in the chat, okay? Because this is not working as I was planning. Okay, please go to the link and vote in both questions, please. Okay.
Okay. In the meantime, let's move to our second speaker, Hélène Buisson, who is the project officer from Mr. Goodfish. She has a very nice interesting task of coordinating the network of fishmongers. She will give you an insight of Mr. Goodfish tool, how it developed over the years, what is the actual magical word behind it, and how it can be a useful tool not only for the society but also for the aquaculture industry. Thanks, Hélène. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Margarita and Sarah, also for the invitation. And it's nice to be together especially on this day of the World Maritime Day. So it's great. So I will share my screen, and I think it will be a good. Everything is fine. I hope you see it. Yep. Okay, so the idea is to explain you about Mr. Goodfish, which is really a tool for responsible and aquatic food choices that has been created some years ago, let's say it like that now, as a European program, which has been initiated in 2010, so some years ago, especially by 3 aquariums. So Nausicaá, where I work, and all the Mr. Goodfish team work. Also the Aquaria of Genova in Italy, and the Aquarium Finisterrae in Spain. So maybe you would think about, so those 3 aquariums are part of the EurOcean network, and maybe you can wonder why this program, Mr. Goodfish, has been developed maybe by those special countries. So first of all, the idea was that those countries realized, and the aquariums especially realized, that we are all, the 3 of us, big seafood consumers, and that we are always especially eating the same species like cod, tuna, sea bass. And so it was really important to change this way. And the idea of why Mr. Goodfish has been conceived by 3 aquariums is that the aquarium is a really good interface between very different publics. So it means with scientists and research, media, institutional sectors, and also the general audience and the youth, for example. So the idea, especially why Mr. Goodfish raised it, was that we were on some very we based on facts. And the first observation, and we always looking on some factual numbers. We were thinking that it was really important to see and to realize that there are really overexploited stocks of species. And for this, we based our global observation on the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. And you can see these numbers. So 37.7% of exploited stocks, but also 50%, a bit more, which are fully exploited, so on the limit. So it means that for us, it was really important to focus on the idea of we need to reduce the human pressure on those special vulnerable stocks. And for this, we realized that it's really necessary to change the practices on fishing and also on the way we consume seafood. So this is the start of it. So how do we work about it? The idea was really to create an innovative approach, and I would like to say maybe to focus on the positive attitude about the program, because of course there are other programs and labels that are really focusing on what we should stop maybe to eat or eat less. That is important to be aware of that. But we need also solution. And Mr. Goodfish really focused on the idea that we need to raise the awareness among seafood consumers, and we need to help them to make the right choice. And for this, we decided at the first that it was important to meet the consumers where he is interested about seafood and aquatic food. So it is either at the restaurant where we can savor it, or at the supermarket or at fishmongers when they are to buy it. And the idea was more to focus also on a kind of green list. So I will explain you how we do that. So for this, of course, we have to work with the whole and the entire value chain. So it is really important for us to work with all the professionals that are on the first part of the aquatic food. So it means the fisheries and producers, the wholesalers and the fish markets, fish auctions, the fishmongers, and all the HoReCa sector, which will have a real impact on the consumer and on the general public. And the idea is really also to, as the consumer could be, and this is also one of our tasks, to raise this awareness of, regarding the consumer. If the consumer is aware that he has he can make a choice, it will also increase the demand of more sustainable seafood and aquatic products. So what we did is that we create 3 criteria, which are, we think that they are quite understandable for the main audience. And those criteria, so let's talk first about the wild fishes, wild species. They are based on those, our methodology is based on those 3 points. So the state of resource, the size, and the season. So if we think about the state of resource, the idea for us is that the species that we will recommend, they need to come from stocks that are in good condition. So you have to have in mind those numbers I showed at the beginning of the presentation. So we have to focus on stocks that are in good condition, and we have to think about them that they can be more exploited on a long-term basis, of course. And for this we really work hand in hand with specialists and with scientists. So we work a lot with Ifremer, which is a major actor for marine science in France, and we also based our work on our we take the reference of the ICES, which helps all Europe also regarding the quotas, etc. So we consider all those numbers and all those facts to determine, to get the idea of the state of resource. Then I talk about size. The idea of size is that you have the legal capture size, which is done by you, but we go a bit further, and we recommend species with a first sexual maturity size, because like this they will help all the ecosystem and all the species to evolve and to be more and more in number. So it's very important to have this to respect this size. And then the idea of season, we recommend that when we talk about season, it's really focused on the ideas of respecting the peak reproduction periods of each species. So with those 3 criteria, we gathered specialists to make some list of recommendation, the green list, and then so the green list is validated by specialists like fishmongers, with wholesalers, with scientists. So everybody is around the table, and we validate the list by basins, French basins, and then we have these incredible posters that are definitely made also for the general audience and the consumers, and you can have the species that we recommend to consume for each season. And when you check this poster, you have, of course, the name of the species, the different and you can find the different criteria I already mentioned, the size, and also the fish zone where it will be sustainable to have to consume it. So this was for the wild species, but of course, and it will be an echo of what Alistair just said before. We have been working also on the aquaculture since 2016 because it was really needed, and the members of our program were really also interested by aquaculture and pushing us to think about something and maybe to create criteria too. So the first task was to work and to make a deep analysis of the existing label and certification that are well known and well spread today, and to see how we can maybe be in a complementarity of those existing certification. So the idea was then to validate criteria by the committee of our aquaculture committee, and then to have the creation and the conception of specification by species. So it really works differently for aquaculture and wild species. And the idea of it's also based on a positive approach, positive list. And the idea for producers is that it can implement our specification, and it have improvement. It can improve his action and his way of getting a responsible aquaculture in 2, 3, or 4 or 5 years. So what are our 3 criteria for aquaculture, sustainable and responsible aquaculture? We are regarding the feed, the breeding practices, and an environmental impact. So it will echo a bit with the last part of Alistair's presentation. So regarding the feed, it's important for us to have in mind that we really take the idea that the species must be fed with a quantity of fish meal that complies with a yield threshold set and optimized for each species. So it means that the meal must be come from a sustainable sources. So and it must be made from wild species subject to quotas or certified sustainable. And it also has to, and if it can be also complement with other sustainable protein sources like co-products, algae, insects, or flax, for example. Then we also focus on breeding practices. So for this, the idea is also like to have species reared under optimum condition in terms of animal welfare and public health. It means that there are criteria about the use of antibiotics that can be only done under veterinary prescription and regarding the European regulation. And there's also the idea of a maximum number of treatments per year. Also, regarding the density, the species must be farmed in accordance with their behavioral practices in the wild. So it means that it has to be an appropriate stocking density for each species. So that's really important. And regarding the environmental impact, the idea is also to have species that are bred under optimum environmental condition, which means that we have to get a balance in the between the production area and also the environment. So it has the dynamic balance has to be maintained. Also, we try. The idea is also by specification to manage all about the chemical pollution. So it means that it has also the aquaculture farm can't affect the environment where it is. So it is really a good link with the image of the rural scene that Alistair shown. And also regarding, for example, the cleaning installation and the ecosystem protection. So we are more in favors for the use of mechanical and biological treatment. So aside for that, we also have a social impact, especially for shrimps, because we have some specification about shrimps. And for this, we work with Earthworm, and it really helps us to add a social criteria on our guidelines. And for this, it is also in echo with what Alistair said. It's really the idea of creating a context where to integrate the local communities and small producers, and to assure also a well-being for the employees in this idea of aquaculture production. So as for the wild species, we also have a poster for the aquaculture, so it's in French, but you can. So we have for the moment some species, not that much to be honest, but we still work on some specifications. So we have specification about sea bass, the trout, shrimps, mussel, oysters, salmon, Manila clown, abalone, and sea bream. Yeah, it's about that. So if you are interested, you can definitely check our website, and we also have a mobile app. It will be easy for you to find the list of species by season, and also all our methodology. We have the explanation of our methodology. You also have all the idea of where to find the species that we recommend, and also you have some recipes, of course, because we also want to share all those benefits with food lovers and seafood lovers. We also are on social media, of course. And today, Mr. Goodfish works with a lot of partners, so around food services, traditional restaurants, fishmongers, wholesalers, supermarkets, producers, etc., and also chefs association and different organizations that helps us to go further on the idea of environmental protection and biodiversity protection. Today, we are also at a new step for Mr. Goodfish as we go to Mr. Goodfish 3.0, and it is a new perspective, a new European perspective that is coming, and it started from the this last 1st of May, because we participate with a consortium of great partners that are here with their logo, symbolized by the logo. We were granted by EurOcean Europe grant in order to make a new campaign for responsible consumption of products from the sea. So the idea is really to make our idea of Mr. Goodfish available across all EU member states in major EU language, and also to make more locally and relevant information regarding seasonality and sustainability, and including new sea basins from Europe. So the program is coordinated by the Cyprus Marine and Maritime Institute. We are also Nausicaá member, of course, of the consortium. We also work with Excite, the European Network of Science Centers and Museum, the social agency 3 o'clock, the European Food Information Council, and also 3 different science centers in Poland, in Bulgaria, and in Norway. So for us, it's very important, because this way, the idea is really to run an awareness-raising campaign, the idea is to inspire citizens across Europe to consider and to have a better look about sustainability, and to make better choice about aquatic food they will consume. And we really want to spread relevant information about how to consume them. So the idea is also to prepare recommendation, so based on our existing criteria for all major EU basins, freshwater and also aquaculture. And the focus is then to upgrade the application and the website with new functionalities and for professionals still, because we need them. We need stakeholders to be part of the project, but also to better reach consumers. So the idea is also then so this is how we work, but maybe I will pass on that, because the idea is really to be in a co-creation approach and to really enrich the actual program to make it fully European, let's say it like that. Of course, we work and we think and develop the project in synergy with other EU-funded initiatives like Taste the Ocean. There is also our sister project, Veryfish. And of course, we are always pleased to participate to any information action about literacy, and like today, it's very important for us to participate to this effort. So if we think about it, let's say that Mr. Goodfish is something which we want practical for both consumers and professional. That is also highlighting all the work done by all the value chain that is implied in the aquatic food, and we really based our work on science, which make it reliable. And the idea is really also to gather more aspects, so and to touch also and to touch more different public like use with and with educational approach and pedagogical approach, but also to integrate CSR because we know that it's a major highlight today for industries. So here we are with Mr. Goodfish, so we are at your disposal for any question.
Thanks a lot, Hélène. Very interesting to understand the process. Very good also to know that the social criteria is being included in the process. And actually, if I think all the time we hear like family and friends asking, how can I make my choice to which fish to eat? That can be a very good tool for all of us also to spread to our community and families. So thanks a lot. And we don't have a lot of time now for the question and answer. We have 5 minutes left. Don't know if it's from the audience we have any questions. Otherwise, I have one for each of our speakers that maybe can be interesting for the audience to hear. So I would start with Alistair. So what do you think, being from the aquaculture industry and world, what do you think would be a good incentive for companies to investing in ocean literary activities? And can you also give us some example of companies that profiles that internalize ocean literacy?
Okay, so a couple of questions there. I mean, aquaculture is all about growing food in water. So water, as you mentioned, it's not just ocean literacy, but it's about the broader picture of our understanding of water as a resource, and also our understanding about aquatic food as being generally considered as being healthy and fresh and good for us. Company profiles that are already, let's say, internalizing ocean literacy, they're doing it because basically companies need to sell products and they need therefore to sell good stories about their products. So if you are, for example, an aquaculture producer, then your biggest product attributes are going to be freshness, they're going to be that it's good for you, it's tasty, it's high quality, it's available all year round, etc., etc. So they'll focus really on the quality of their environment, they'll focus on the tradition of their company, they'll focus on the heritage of growing food from the sea or from fresh water. So in that case, it's very easy to internalize the whole idea of ocean literacy because they're actually very well connected with it. when you go a little bit further out, you have, for example, feed ingredient companies that I mentioned. They want to talk about the performance of their ingredients. They want to talk about the naturalness of their products. I showed you a picture of a trout catching a fly. So the idea of insect meal being natural, etc., etc. So I think those are just a couple of examples of how that's being internalized already.
Thanks, Alistair. Very, very nice and insightful. And now we have actually now a question from the audience addressing Hélène. So what would you say from Joanna Anastasio? So what would you say is the main difference between standard sustainability profit regarding Mr. Goodfish and MSC? I guess MSC the standard, right? The certification.
Yeah. So actually we really focus on the special zone, and MSC will go really further than that. And when we talk about stock resource, it's so we really focus more on with a European point of view, and we are based also on this idea of a positive approach. So I think MSC is really more also about the criteria based about industries, but Justine will help me about maybe the answer also.
Yes, hello. The main difference between MSC and us is the seasonality, the rhythm of our recommendation, and we are based on the latest advice and the species which is recommended by Mr. Goodfish. It is not species which are it's only species. It's coastal species, little species such as mullet, maybe gurnards. So it's not the same species like MSC. They are it is a whole approach for the MSC, and they are on all the region of the world, and we are based just on the coastal species. And sometimes we make recommendation on herring, for example, which are already recommended by MSC. But the main difference between MSC and us is the seasonality and the target species.
Thanks, Hélène. Justine, I hope, Joanna, your question has been addressed. Unfortunately, yeah, thank you. We don't have much more time. I think like we learn a lot today about aquaculture innovation, the way that trying really to meet the environmental standards from the aquaculture industry, and the investment in research and knowledge, the important connection aquaculture has with the society in different way, and a very good tool to understand aquaculture and understand what we are eating every day. So I think basing both from the aquaculture sector, industry, and also for these tools are very important because they are science-based. We have been always, we receive a lot of information. Many is about greenwashing. We don't want greenwashing, so it's good that those activities and those programs exist. So with that, I would have to close the webinar. I would like to thanks Alistair and Hélène and Justine for your intervention. I would like to thank the EurOcean Foundation for organizing this very nice webinar. All of you that you engaged and listened the webinar. I would encourage you to follow EurOcean social media to stay up to date with all the new webinar of this series. And remember that all the webinars have been also recorded and will be added in the YouTube channel of EurOcean. Now, before saying goodbye, I just send a link also in the chat of the Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership, which is the partnership I'm working for. So then in case you want to learn more about it, we also work a lot on ocean literacy with our projects, and that's it. So see you next time, and enjoy your afternoon. Bye-bye.